Shalom, welcome to Rob on the Rock. I'm Rob Vanoff, and today I'm excited because we're going to look at a really great and important verse. It's in John chapter 19, verses 19 and 20, where we see the name of the Messiah, the name of our King, in three languages. It's written on the cross in Aramaic, in Latin, and in Greek. So we're going to look at that in some detail. I hope it's a blessing for you. So what we're looking at here is a prime example where we have multiple languages in the Gospels coming to bear. In John 19 and 20, it says that Pilate also wrote an inscription and he put it on the cross, and it was written, Jesus the Nazarene, the King of the Jews. And then it says that it was written in the very next verse, verse 20, in the NASB says Hebrew, Latin, and Greek, and it's Hebraisti, Romanaisti, Hellenisti, which means it was written in the language of the Hebrews, or the Hebrewish language, which will actually be Aramaic, the language of the Romans, and the language of the Hellenists, or the Greek. In the Gospel of John, and many times in all the Gospels, when it says something is in the Hebrew language, it is in the Aramaic, actual Aramaic language. For example, Golgotha, the place of the skull, from the cross itself, where Yeshua says, Eli, Eli, lama sabachthani, that's Aramaic, we know. Also, Talitha kum, where he says, little girl, arise. There are multiple examples of Aramaic being preserved for us in transliteration in the Greek. So here we can be confident that the actual language in today's terms would be what we call Jewish Aramaic. As a matter of fact, a lot of the Bibles, such as the NASB, will have a footnote at John 19, verse 20, where it says Hebrew, and it'll say Jewish Aramaic. So scholars already understand this. So what we have here, the first is in the language of the Hebrews, Yeshua Natsraya Malka di Hudaya. Yeshua Natsraya Malka di Hudaya. That means Yeshua, or Jesus, the Nazarene, King of the Jews. And what we have next is the Latin. And look at this first word here, Jesus. Jesus Nazarenus Rex Judaeorum. Same thing. It means the same thing. Jesus, the Nazarene, King of the Jews. And if you'll notice, the initial letters, what they later call in rabbinic terms, Rashi Tevot, or the first letter of each of these words in Latin, is I, N, R, I. Oops, I put it under the D there. There it is. I-N-R-I. Have you ever seen that before? Maybe maybe on a crucifix or something. I-N-R-I. If you ever wondered what that means, it doesn't mean iron nails ran in or anything like that. Those are clever attempts to interpret it. But it's the simple Rashi Tevot, or acronym, for the Latin part of the inscription. Jesus is the I, Nazarenus is the N, Rex is the word king, and maybe you know that word from Tyrannosaurus Rex, right? King. And Judaeorum is the last I. I-N-R-I. And then John tells us that the third language was Hellenisti, which is that Greek. And here we see Jesus ha Nazaraios, ha Basileos, ton Judaion. So the Greek takes kind of more space than the Aramaic and the Latin, but I've kind of tried to stretch the font size so that they would take up about the same amount of width. But here we have it. All three languages, we have the name Yeshua. So we have Yod. Oops, let me start a little lower than that. Yod, Shin, Vav, Ayin, Yeshua. We have Jesus in Latin, which of course there's no letter J at this time in history, but that's where we get Jesus. That I becomes a J, Jesus. Perfectly good Latin version of Yeshua. And then we have our Greek, which also starts with a iota and has an eta, what we call an eta there, sigma, Jesus. Now, one last thing that's important to remember, I'm going to just zero in on the Latin and the Greek here. There's our Latin, and here's our Greek. Jesus, and Jesus is the last letter here is actually, I'm just going to kind of mark it off here. That's not part of the name. Now, maybe you've already taken some Latin or some Greek, but the ending here, it flags the case ending, or it flags the case. So in this case, the sigma, both in the, or S letter here in the Latin and in the Greek, represents the nominative case. So it's not part of the actual word. It doesn't have any bearing on the meaning of the word. If the name Jesus was to be the object, or the indirect object, or the direct object of the sentence, that letter S would be replaced likely with a different letter, not changing the meaning of the word at all. So this letter S at the end of the Latin and at the end of the Greek, remember the capital Greek sigma looks like a letter C, is not actually part of the name. So Jesu or Yeshu, because remember Latin and Greek do not have a letter sh, an SH letter, so they use the letter sigma to represent it. But I'm confident that at least the people who in the first century who knew these multiple languages would have said Yeshu, Yeshu, or Yeshua. Both are completely acceptable. So I just hope this was a helpful insight to what we're reading in John 19, verses 19 and 20, the situation in first century Jerusalem and Judea, actually the whole land of Israel, where we have multiple languages coming to bear. We have Aramaic, we have Latin, we have Greek, and of course there's Hebrew. And Hebrew and Aramaic are differentiated somewhat in this time frame. But in Raw on the Rock videos, I've looked into some Hebrew, I've looked into some Greek, and I've looked into some Aramaic at different times. So today I wanted to bring them all, bring three different languages together so you could see some Aramaic, some Latin, and some Greek, all pertaining to what Yeshua did for us on the cross and who he is forever. He is Yeshua, or Jesus of Nazareth, King of the Jews, and indeed King of the world. Shalom.